Welcome to the Mustard Seed Media Video Podcast. My name is Bob, and this is the podcast for Drupal web designers. It's been a little while, but I'm back at least for one episode. I try and get these out as much as I can. Towards the end of the year, I got a little slower. So luckily, I can get another one done for you. This week, we're going to talk about site architecture a little bit. One of the biggest problems when I come in to work on a site oftentimes is a very disorganized page architecture. So pages are just kind of strewn all about. There's no rhyme or reason to them. And too often, this is indicated by the URL structures that you see in pages. So you'll have a lot of what I call flat architecture, which is, every page is kind of at / page name. So About Us is there, but also an event might be there. And so you would have just / event name rather than a proper architecture which organizes the site the way the user kind of expects, which might be something like / events / year / title of the event. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some things in place today. And this is especially effective. This is how I build for my clients. To prevent them from creating poor architecture. And so when you create a site, you can put some things in place that stops people from doing things that are going to be bad for their site. So we're going to lay down some things that not only help them easily create good architecture, but also stop them from doing things that are bad. So let's dive right in. We're going to use 3 modules. Node hierarchy module. What are the other ones? I forget. Menuless node type, which is a new one I just started using that's really great, and menu block module, which will help us create menus out of all this stuff to give a nice, good, clean user experience. So let's dive right in. Node hierarchy module, great module, allows you to take nodes specifically and set up parent-child relationships to them. This is going to allow us to easily create parent-child pages to sort of organize the structure of our site into these relationships. The downside of this is it only does nodes. I'd love to see this functionality be able to be used with views pages, all kinds of other stuff, but right now we're just limited to nodes. So usually I only put this on a couple of different content types. I don't use it everywhere, and I won't really talk about that, but that's basically what this does, is allows us to set up parent-child relationships. Another important thing it also does is it'll write the URLs for us based on these relationships, and I'll show you that. Then we have menuless node type. This is something brand new I just started using, and the reason we use it is to designate certain types of content that you're not allowed to use the Drupal menu when you edit a node or you add a node. You can add it to the menu right there. A lot of times we want to prevent that because node hierarchy is going to be creating our menu items. So we don't want to have 2 selections there. We're going to confuse the creator of the content. So this allows us to hide this. This or a very similar version of this is going into Drupal core for Drupal 7. So that's a good thing. Menu block. This is a great module. It just allows us to have different levels of menus into a block, and I'll show you how that comes into play. So let's go ahead and set all this stuff up. We're using those 3 modules. Let's look at my module page real quick. You're going to have to bear with me. I didn't set this up quite as extensive as I usually did, so we're just going to look at some stuff here. So we have node hierarchy module. We're going to set that up, base module. You also have some of these other things that you can use. You can set up access based on node hierarchy, which is cool. You can embed children. So if we create a child node of a certain node, we can embed that right onto the parent node. That's cool. And then we have some widgets that we can use. Then we have our other 2 modules we're using, menu block and menuless node type. We're going to enable those. Also note that you're going to need some things like path auto and token to do the menu rewriting the URL rewriting that we're going to do. So then I'm going to go into my content types, and I'm just going to do this with page. And I'm going to edit my page content type to allow it to use node hierarchy. So we're going to allow child nodes of the type page. Now, once we have a lot of content types, you don't always probably want to have every node type allowed as a child of every other node type. So you can choose who the children of each node type can be. And so for this case, we're only going to allow pages to be children of other pages. We can set up a default parent. Right now we don't have any content, but this is helpful if, for example, you have a particular page that's created and you want all of this content type to choose that as the parent. You can set up a default parent. And then this is the menu stuff that we're talking about. So we can say default to having pages in the menu. You can allow multiple parents, which can get confusing, but it's doable. Then the other thing we're going to do here is set up menu settings. This is that menu list node type module doing this. Use this content type in menus. No, we don't want to use this content type in menus. Now, that doesn't mean we can't actually put this content in a menu. What it means is we're not going to show the default Drupal menu addition stuff on the piece of content when we're adding or editing it. So we're going to use node hierarchy to do that instead. So this is the setup I want. And so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a page node. And we'll see where these features show up. So this is going to be a test parent page. This is like maybe a main menu item. Oops. And so then we now have our node hierarchy selection. Notice there is no menu selection under here like you would normally see. Now this is vertical tabs module laying it out like this. This is in Drupal 7 as well. So we now have node hierarchy. So we can choose a parent node. Right now we have no nodes on our site, so we can't choose a parent node. We're creating a parent node. We can choose to show it in the menu or not show it in the menu, and we can choose our menu. Now note that if you go under node hierarchy preferences, you can set what your primary menu is, and we can save that. And you can also, by default, it hides the nodes in the menu if you don't, in the menu settings, if you don't check this box. If you check this box, it'll show all of them, even the ones you don't put in a menu. You usually want to leave that unchecked. So we're going to create a page, and we're going to choose no parent. We're going to put it in the primary links menu. You can customize the menu title here if you want it something different. Otherwise, it'll use the page title. And if you're putting it in some menus that expand or contract, like a block menu, you can choose to do that as well. I'm just going to leave this as is. This is the the title for this. And that'll just show on hover. So we can save that, and that went ahead and it created it in the menu. And now what we have, you'll notice this new tab on this page called Children. We can click that, and right now there are no children of this page. So we can create a new child page. Now, if you would have allowed stories as children, you would have a link to create stories here as well. So I'm going to create a new child page. And then for my parent node, I could choose none, which would put it at the top level again, or I can choose this as my parent. That's good. I'm going to show it in the menu. And that's it. I'm going to save it. So now, you'll notice that now we're actually viewing the parent page. We can look at its children and see that we just created a child page. And from there, we can edit, delete, or do whatever. Let's add another one. And so I'm going to choose the test parent page again. Now notice what's really nice is we start to see a hierarchy here. So we can see that there's another child page. We could create this as a child page of this child page, but we don't want to. We're going to keep it at 2 levels. We're going to choose test parent page. We're going to show in the menu, and we're going to save it. Now you can see we have 2 child pages. Now what's nice is we can now reorder these pages. And this child order isn't necessarily used in menus. At least I haven't seen it reflected that way. It's usually used when you build default views or some other things that come with node hierarchy. It'll use this child order. So you can redrag the child order of all this stuff here. So let's look at some of this stuff now. Let's look at the URL. We're using a default URL here. This is Drupal's default path auto settings. Let's go in and let's change that. We're going to go into our automated aliases, which is path auto module. And in our node paths, instead of using content/title raw, we're going to look at replacement patterns. And we're going to use full hierarchy path title raw. This is from node hierarchy module. You also have some other options you can look at here. But we're going to use this token. And this is usually the go-to token for using node hierarchy. And we're going to save this. And what this is going to do is this is going to look at the hierarchy and build our URL aliases off that hierarchy. So let's go back to our parent page. And by the way, you'll notice that we now have drop-downs that show our child pages because they were shown as parent pages. Or I'm sorry, they were chosen as this parent page. They automatically put them in the proper menu with the parent. So let's edit these URLs. So you can now see content/test parent page is the URL. Now that I've got the node hierarchy set up, I'm just going to resave this, which will regenerate this alias. And I'm going to save. You can now notice that it shifted just to the node title. So let's do that for our children as well. Let's look at the children. We're going to edit them. You could do this through the content menu to regenerate these aliases as well, but I want to show you exactly what's happening. So now I regenerated this alias. Now look at it. It's using the parent page title / the child page title. That's a very good thing for site architecture. That really defines where these things are in the architecture. So let's edit the second child page just to update the URL as well. So now we got some nice structure going on here. The only thing missing is if you're not using drop-down menus, sometimes you aren't, you want to be able to have your secondary menus in a sidebar. So let's go, we're going to use menu block module. Once you install that, you'll get a new thing on the blocks page that says add menu block. This is very nice. So this is creating a block out of some part of your menu. So now let's look at this. Block title, if you can put in a title which will show the title of the block for this. If you leave it blank, it'll use the parent page or the parent menu item as the title, which we want to do, which is great. And we're going to make it a link. You'll see that in a second. Administrative title, this is required for blocks. We'll just call it our secondary links. Even, don't get that, I shouldn't call it that. Let's call it second level links. Don't get that confused with Drupal secondary links. So we're going to make it out of our primary menu, and we're going to make it the root of our primary menu as the main item. By choosing the root, this is going to allow us to use this menu throughout the menu structure, not just in one section. And then what we're going to do is we want the starting level of the menu to be secondary links. So it's the second level. So we're not going to use this menu when we're just using primary links, because that is going to show up here automatically. If we're not using drop-downs, we want it to start at the secondary level. Now, some of this stuff gets pretty crazy. You can make this start by following the active menu item. You can set depth. You can expand the tree by default. So if you have 3 levels, it'll automatically expand and show those. You can sort the menu tree by the active menu. You can do all kinds of stuff here. This is regular block stuff here. So play around with this stuff. Really what you want to do is you want to sort of set this up, play with some of these settings, and then you'll start to see how it works. It's kind of hard to explain, but once you start messing with it, you'll be able to see exactly what it does. So now I'm going to save this block, and I now have this new block called second level links, and I'm going to put it on my sidebar. Now, this is only going to show on a sidebar where there are secondary links. So if you're using context or something else, know that it'll only show where it's appropriate. It won't show everywhere. So if we go to the home page, there's no secondary links on the home page, so it won't show there. Now I'm hoping I'm going to go to the parent page and it's going to show on the sidebar. It does. Great. So now what we have is we have the test parent page is the menu block title, and then we have its children here. So let's, just to prove the point here, let's create another page. And I'm going to set it as its own parent page. So now we have a second parent. Let me add a child to it. And now I'm going to choose the other parent as the parent item. I'm going to show it in the menu, and I'm going to save it. So if we weren't using drop-downs, so ignore this right now. We're going to use the sidebar links as our secondary items. So now we go to this parent page, we have its children in the sidebar, but if we go to this other parent page, we have its children in the sidebar and a link back to the parent, or we can go down and it'll still be there. If we have multiple levels, we can use this menu block to go through those multiple levels. Very convenient way for people that don't like drop-downs to be able to do parent-child menus or second level, third level menus in the sidebar without any kind of craziness. Menu block module just does it. So this has set us up a perfect architecture where our URLs are consistent. A user can't put something in a menu where it doesn't belong because node hierarchy is controlling the menus based on parents and children. Menuless node type ensures that. Menu block allows us to put sort of the second, third, fourth level menu items on the sidebar if you're not using drop-downs. All kinds of awesome stuff here. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully it'll make you create tighter architecture on your Drupal site. As always, you can visit us over at mustardseedmedia.com/podcast, which is where you'll find this podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes. You can do all that stuff. Thanks for your awesome support, all the great donations that are being thrown at the podcast. Please chip in. We're going to try and do these podcasts more. If you want to encourage that, you can chip in via PayPal over there. Throw a couple bucks at it to show us that you appreciate what we're doing. That's it. We'll see you hopefully very soon on the Mustard Seed Media video podcast.